This morning, Donald Trump posted on Truth Social that Iran, and I'm quoting him exactly, informed us that they are in a state of collapse. I want to spend the next few minutes explaining what Trump is not telling you about that statement. Not because I want to defend everything Iran has done in this conflict, but because the gap between what Trump said and what is actually happening is so large and so consequential for understanding where this conflict goes that leaving it unaddressed would be a failure of analysis. Let me start with the statement itself. Iran informed us that they are in a state of collapse. This is a remarkable sentence. Think about what it is actually claiming.
Iran, the country whose foreign minister just flew from Islamabad to Muscat to Moscow and back to Islamabad in 4 days, conducting a diplomatic offensive across four countries simultaneously, told America it is collapsing. The country whose oil exports in March 2026 were above pre war levels told America it is collapsing. The country whose IRGC generals just publicly overruled their own foreign minister on Hormuz, demonstrating operational control of the strait on the same day the foreign minister said it was open, told America it is collapsing. Either Trump is describing something real that happened in a private channel, and I will address that possibility, or he is describing a negotiating signal as a collapse admission. And the difference between those two things is the difference between a war that is ending on American terms and a war that is being managed toward a negotiated exit by a country that is still standing, still exporting oil, and still controlling Hormuz. What Iran actually said versus what Trump said, Iran said CBS News and multiple outlets reported today that Iran proposed both countries drop restrictions on the Strait of Hormuz but delay talks on the Islamic Republic's nuclear program. That is Iran's proposal, not a surrender, not a collapse admission, a staged negotiating framework in which Hormuz opens, both sides lifting their respective restrictions simultaneously, while the nuclear question is deferred to a subsequent phase. Read that carefully. Iran is proposing a mutual de escalation of Hormuz. America lifts the blockade. Iran lifts its Hormuz restrictions. Both sides get something. Then the nuclear question is addressed in a second phase. This is the same position Iran's UN ambassador stated publicly on April 22nd. As soon as Washington ends the naval blockade, talks will be held in Islamabad. Iran has been saying this for weeks. The proposal is consistent and public. It has not changed. What has changed is how Trump is characterizing it. A country that proposes a mutual de escalation framework is not in a state of collapse. A country in a state of collapse does not negotiate stage frameworks with the party that is supposedly watching it fall. A country in a state of collapse does not send its foreign minister to four countries in 4 days. A country in a state of collapse does not have the operational capacity for its IRGC to enforce its contradictions of its own foreign minister on the ground in real time. What Iran is doing is negotiating from a position of durability, not strength in the conventional military sense. Iran's infrastructure has been heavily damaged, its air defenses degraded, its senior leadership killed or wounded. Durability. It has survived 70 days of the most intensive American air campaign since the Gulf War, and it is still making proposals, still moving diplomats, still controlling Hormuz. That is not a state of collapse. That is a state of managed endurance. What Trump is not telling you, five specific things. Let me go through them one by one. Each one tells you something important about the actual state of this conflict. The first thing Trump is not telling you is that the USS Ford aircraft carrier is going home. Confirmed today by the Associated Press, the USS Gerald R. Ford, one of America's most capable carriers, deployed to this conflict from the beginning, is heading home after what the AP describes as a record breaking deployment. Aircraft carriers do not leave an active theater where the adversary is in a state of collapse. They leave when the strategic situation is being reassessed, when political and logistical factors require redeployment, when the operational picture has stabilized to the point where the carrier's continued presence is evaluated against other commitments. Trump told you Iran is collapsing. He did not tell you the Ford is going home. The second thing Trump is not telling you is that Brent crude is above $112 per barrel with no clear resolution in sight, confirmed by CBS News today. Oil above $112 means the global energy market does not believe Iran is collapsing. A collapsing Iran means Hormuz reopens. Hormuz reopening means oil prices drop sharply. Oil above $112 means traders are pricing in continued Hormuz disruption. The market is saying the opposite of what Trump is saying, and the market has more financial incentive to be accurate than a president managing domestic political optics. The third thing Trump is not telling you is what oil above $112 means for American families specifically. U.S. gasoline is above $4 per gallon. American Airlines cut its profit forecast. Consumer confidence has declined. The World Food Program warned that up to 45 million more people could face acute food insecurity if this conflict does not end soon. These are the measurable costs of a war that Trump is managing while posting about Iranian collapse. The collapse should have ended these costs by now. It has not, because the collapse has not happened. The fourth thing Trump is not telling you is that Iran's leadership structure is functioning on multiple layers. Iranian official Bathaei said today, cited by CBS News, the leadership matter is not what some people in the West think. It is a manageable issue. Reuters cited sources confirming that Mojtaba Khamenei communicates through IRGC aides because of his injuries, but the system of government continues to function. The IRGC's public contradiction of IRGC on Hormuz, which I covered in detail in my previous video, was not chaos. It was a specific institution asserting specific authority within a stressed but operational government. That is not collapse. That is an institution making its power visible. The fifth thing Trump is not telling you is that Iran's steel export ban, announced effective April 26th, confirmed today, reveals a government that is managing its strategic resource base with forward looking intention. Iran banned all steel exports because airstrikes targeted its steel industry. Steel is a strategically important material for military production, including missiles, drones, and ships. A country in a state of collapse does not implement strategic export controls on militarily critical materials. A country managing a wartime resource challenge and planning for what comes next does exactly this. Why the collapse framing does strategic damage. I want to be honest about something. Trump's framing is not only inaccurate, it is strategically counterproductive. For Trump domestically, it does political work. If Iran is collapsing, any deal can be presented as Iranian surrender. The framing has a purpose, but the framing also creates a trap because it makes it impossible for America to accept the deal that is actually available. The staged framework, mutual Hormuz de escalation, nuclear question deferred, without contradicting the collapse narrative. If Iran is in a state of collapse, why is America accepting a framework that lifts the blockade in exchange for Iran lifting its Hormuz restrictions? That looks like America making a concession to a collapsing adversary, and it is politically indefensible under the collapse framing. So Trump's framing, intended to make America look strong, actually narrows America's diplomatic options. It makes the achievable deal harder to accept publicly. It pushes America toward an outcome, unconditional Iranian capitulation on all terms simultaneously. That is not on the table and will not be on the table before the Beijing summit. The staged framework that Iran proposed is on the table. Russia's uranium custodianship offer for the nuclear phase is on the table. The Oman back channel is loaded with Iran's improved proposal. The Beijing summit in 2 weeks is where Xi Jinping, who has been briefed by Russia on everything IRGC shared in Moscow, will sit across from Trump. The collapse narrative makes that conversation harder, not easier, because she knows what the market knows. Oil is above 112. The Ford is going home. Iran proposed a stage framework. None of that is consistent with a state of collapse, the Lebanon dimension. Trump is not mentioning. There is a sixth thing Trump is not telling you that I want to address specifically because it directly contradicts the collapse narrative. Hezbollah is still firing. Today, confirmed by the Israeli Defense Forces, Hezbollah launched explosive drones that detonated near IDF soldiers operating in southern Lebanon. The IDF described this as a violation of ceasefire understandings. Israel warned Lebanese civilians to flee homes ahead of military operations. A country whose strategic partner and key ally, Hezbollah, is still actively firing into Israel is not a country whose network has collapsed. Iran built Hezbollah over 40 years as a strategic asset precisely for this kind of extended attrition, the capacity to continue operating independently even when Iran itself is under maximum pressure. Hezbollah's continued operational activity tells you two things. First, that Iran's regional network is more resilient than the collapse narrative suggests. Second, that any deal that ends the Iran war without addressing the Lebanon front is an incomplete settlement, one that leaves a still active conflict on Israel's northern border. Trump posted about Iranian collapse while Hezbollah was firing drones into Israel. He did not connect those two facts. I am connecting them for you. A collapsing Iran does not have an active Hezbollah still conducting operations on a second front simultaneously. It has an axis of resistance that is stressed, constrained, and reduced, but that continues to function across multiple theaters simultaneously. That is the full picture, not the Truth Social post. The full picture. Let me address the possibility I raised at the beginning that Trump's collapse statement reflects something communicated through a private channel. Iran has a history of communicating through back channels in ways that do not map onto its public statements. The Oman channel exists specifically for this purpose. It is possible that Iran communicated through the Oman channel or through Pakistan something about its economic stress. Its central bank has warned internally that recovery from this conflict could take 12 years. The rial has depreciated significantly. Inflation is severe in a way that Trump is characterizing as a collapse admission. If that is what happened, it is a serious mischaracterization. Telling a mediating party that your economy is under severe stress and you need a deal is not the same as informing America that you are in a state of collapse. Acknowledging economic pain to Oman in a private channel to demonstrate the urgency of reaching a deal is a negotiating move, not a surrender. And broadcasting that private communication as a collapse admission, if that is what Trump did, damages the private channel. It tells Iran that whatever it communicates through Oman can be reposted on Truth Social as a declaration of defeat. That is exactly the kind of behavior that makes private channels stop functioning. What actually comes next? The staged framework Iran proposed, mutual Hormuz restriction lifting, nuclear question deferred, is the most realistic path to an agreement before Beijing. If both sides lift Hormuz restrictions simultaneously, oil prices drop, American consumers feel relief, and Trump can present Hormuz opening as a win. Iran can present the blockade lifting as a win. The nuclear question goes to the next phase with Russia's custodianship offer available as the mechanism. The Beijing summit is where Xi Jinping encourages Trump to accept the staged framework, to present it not as a concession to a country that is collapsing, but as a deal that achieves what America said it wanted: Hormuz open, nuclear question addressed in stages with international verification. Trump said Iran is in a state of collapse. Here is what he is not telling you. Iran's oil exports are above pre-war levels. The USS Ford is going home. Oil is above 112. Iran banned steel exports as wartime resource management. Hezbollah is still firing. Iran proposed a staged framework containing what America says it wants: Hormuz open. And Russia holds the uranium mechanism the next phase requires, available whenever America is ready to accept what it rejected. A country in a state of collapse does not do any of those things. A country managing a difficult but durable position toward a negotiated exit does all of them. And the distance between those two descriptions, collapse versus managed durability, is the distance between what Trump is telling the American public and what is actually happening on the ground, in the markets, in the diplomatic channels, and in the Strait of Hormuz, where Iran is still charging ships over $1 million per transit. Watch the Beijing summit in 2 weeks, because that is where the distance between state of collapse and we reached a framework will become visible to everyone who has been paying attention to what Trump is not telling them. Push back on this if you see it differently. Everything I have cited is on the record and publicly available today.